All right, and we're live, and I am joined with the great Bechtloff. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. Long day for both of us. We're both tired, so this probably won't
Yeah.
be long. But um, yes, and the reason I wanted to have you on because I wanted to have this was about bachelor finances, but I figured we'd do the Bachelor Bechtloff finances because he is both the bachelor and he is the Bechtloff. And the reason I'm asked him was because, like I said to him right before the show started, I want to talk to someone who's a millennial that lives in a more rural area because a lot of the advice I know of, some that doesn't apply to when you live in remote areas, and some of the advantages of living in remote areas don't apply. So I'm just gonna like open up the floor to Chris, and he can kind of give us his pearls of wisdom, what he's learned, the hard way, the easy way, and how he's dealt with some of the financial challenges and what he's learned from them, and maybe some of the solutions he's come up to deal with them. Anyway, buddy, take it away.
Well, I mean, financially, I don't have a ton of things to say other than, a lot of what I've told guys younger than me. I've said, don't pursue the idiotic degrees. Don't same stuff Aaron says. Go get yourself a trade job, that kind of thing. Don't go into debt if you can help it. Um, I've heard a lot of like more Christian ministries say don't, a house and the first car, not buying second vehicles or anything like that should be the only things you go into debt for if you can help it. Um, so just basic stuff like that, and find good roommates if you can. That's another thing.
Oh
I
yes,
can't imagine like I've
roommates. Talk about that because I haven't had a roommate since my 20s, and I'm in my senior 40s. So talk about that a bit.
I've never technically lived alone. I mean, I'm not I lived with my parents until I was, in my early 20s. I lived with a girlfriend after that. I had roommates after that. I can't I just never seen it as being worth it. Now, obviously, that's a lot different if you can't find a good roommate. I was very lucky. I had friends, that were in similar situations. Um, yeah, it's better to be living in an efficiency apartment eating ramen noodles than have a bad roommate. I've had bad
Yes, it
roommates.
is. I can.
That's a nightmare. That's a nightmare. But if you can find a good roommate, man, that's one of the best ways to go. I don't think people should be living on their own. I don't think that's even all that natural for us. Um, everyone complains the millennials, never leave the house, never leave their parents' house and that kind of shit. But I mean, I don't even see that as inherently wrong if they're contributing to the household income. I mean, time was, kids left their parents' house when they went and got married, and then they lived with their spouse. I don't think it's all that good. I don't think it's good psychologically, but I don't think it's good financially to live alone if you can help it. Have a spouse, have friends that are roommates. As long as you're not being a sponge, live with your parents or something. I can't. I don't see it being worth it unless you're making really good money. I don't see it being worth it living alone.
Yeah, there are a lot of. Well, talk about some of the financial benefits. Well, yeah, psychological benefits too. I mean, yeah, it's not just life isn't just all about money. Obviously, the benefits of having roommates or living
Oh,
with
well,
your
I mean,
parents.
again, as long as it's somebody you get along with, some of the best memories of my life are just hanging out with roommates. You know, just dumb shit. LAN parties on video games or whatever. That's some of the best memories I've had in my life. And you know, the handful of times in my life I've been in places alone, it's almost. So, I mean, I'm an only child, so I'm not used to a tremendous amount of company. But again, I've never lived alone, actually. Um, and you know what? Maybe it's good to keep you out of a little bit of debauchery too. I guess I don't know. You can't exactly have the origin or the orgy with a bunch of traps and a goat if your roommate's gonna. I don't know. Maybe it's good for that too.
Depends on your roommate, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, maybe it does. But um, but yeah, I guess it might keep you out of that kind of stuff. I don't know. I think it's good. I don't think it's good for people to live alone. There's this sort of like cultural thing where it's like, oh, you're not really an adult until you live alone, and everybody goes and lives in some crappy closet eating ramen noodles, and they're like, yeah, this is the life. I don't get that. I, in a rural area like this, 2, 3 friends can rent a really nice house for without even having tremendously great jobs. I mean, like I said, I don't think it's a good idea to live alone.
Well, have you just to get into the differences because, like I said, rural versus urban living. What have you ever lived? You said you never lived alone. You always had roommates, but have any of those like been in like a big city, like Pittsburgh or Philly or any of those areas?
I lived in Pittsburgh briefly. I don't know how big of a city I'd call it, but yeah, I did live in Pittsburgh briefly, and I know when you live in a big city, you don't need a car. That's the other thing. Like,
Mhm.
I grew up in a town called Waldorf down in Maryland, and it was like an incredibly dense suburb to the point where like I could ride my bike to all my friends' houses, my school, a really nice community pool, like 4 or 5 shopping centers, a movie theater, a mall, that kind of stuff. So everything was within 5 miles of me, everything I could possibly need. And I remember, and I was like 15 when we moved from there, so I was still a kid. But I remember my dad was a manager at Track Auto, which doesn't even exist anymore. But his assistant manager, who was an adult in his 30s, didn't own a car. He rode a bike everywhere. If it was raining, he had one of those big ponchos that would even fit over his backpack and stuff. He saw a car as a luxury. And I think that's especially true if you live in a big city. When I lived in Pittsburgh, I didn't have a car at the time, and I didn't need one.
If you live in like New York, it's not luxury. Actually, it's a nuisance, pain in the ass. Because I mean I lived there until I was 24, almost 25, and having a car there is just a pain in the ass. Because I mean, parking the car on the street and alternate side day. Oh, I don't even want to get into it, but it's just a total nightmare.
Oh yeah, I have a buddy of mine that's in the middle of this very rural county. There is a little city, Lancaster City, and he lives right in that. And I don't even like going to his house because it's on street parking and stuff like that. I don't mind it on the weekend because there's kind of a garage, like a mechanic garage right next to his house that is closed on the weekend, so I can just park in front of that. But during the week, it's kind of a nightmare hanging out at his house.
Yeah, so you could imagine what it's like in like large cities with the. I mean, actually, Seattle is a little bit like I noticed this because I lived in both coasts. I lived in New York, I lived in Boston, and I lived in Seattle. And the Northeast, big cities, New York, Boston, whatever, Philly, Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. Those cities tend to be more have more really good public transit. Where like you could take LA, which you say it's a big city, like as far as population wise, but public transportation system there kind of sucks. I mean,
there's a little bit of one in this area, but it's not something I'd ever want to be in a position to rely on. It doesn't run on Sundays. It's a bus service, and it's like Lancaster City is right in the middle of Lancaster County, and almost all the roads kind of go out like almost spokes on a wagon wheel from it. But all the buses go from a location to Lancaster City. So if you want to go from one location to another that isn't Lancaster, you got to catch like 2 buses, and you're looking at probably. I did it a couple of times when I first moved up here and wasn't old enough for a car. And I mean, to get to the mall, which would normally be a half an hour drive, was damn near a 3-hour round trip because you're waiting on buses and whatnot. It's just.
And you live up in the Northeast where you can have really inclement weather. So sitting in a bus stop when it's 25 degrees and snowing and you're freezing your nuts off, that's not exactly
Yeah, I would not want to have to rely on the bus around here. I mean, in a big city that's different, but around a car is definitely not a luxury if you're going to live rural.
Yeah, I think so. A car is something that you need living out there. So in that way. So what are some of the ways that you've come up? Like, if you could give more practical, more micro examples of things you do or can do to save money if you're living in a rural area, and would you recommend it? Because you said you did briefly live in Pittsburgh, and what did you notice, if anything, like financially? What was more expensive? What was less expensive?
Well, not having a car is less expensive, but also then there's the time thing. Even in unless you're talking like really dense like New York City, even if you can walk to everything, it still would have been faster to have a car. So you turned what would have been a 5-minute drive into a 30 to 40-minute walk. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So there's the time sink when you don't have a car. That can be a problem. Um, and I didn't live in Pittsburgh long enough that I could really tell you too much, but I did find the cost of living was considerably higher generally. And now with Pittsburgh, I don't think it's a big enough city to really get the benefits of a city. There wasn't a lot to do downtown. You know, you have those benefits when you live in the city that you have all the cool places to go. I didn't find there was a lot of that in Pittsburgh. Um, Downtown Pittsburgh's really weird. At least it was when I lived there, which is well
Well,
over a
you
decade
got
ago.
all the rivers, so
Yeah.
it's a hard. I know someone who I went to high school with. She moved there. She got married and moved there, and she was talking about how she's divorced now, and her husband lives kind of like on the opposite side of the city, and just trying to navigate it. This what like you said. Apparently, the layout of the city, whoever did it was like on an LSD trip.
Yeah, you have that small section right where the rivers meet. That's the downtown with all the skyscrapers, and you'd think there'd be all sorts of things to do there, but there's not. It's like the handful of shops that are there. It's like I guess there's just a bunch of bigwig banksters in there, and all these shops cater to them on their lunch break because half of them aren't even open on the weekend. It's at least when I was there, which was a while ago. Um, so I always found Pittsburgh to have the worst aspects of a city without a lot of the benefits. I
It
like
does.
I like the energy of a city. I like being in a city. It's just I can't afford it. You know,
Yeah.
I've said before that when you're poor or lower middle class, depending on how you measure it, then you can either kind of live in the sticks or the ghetto. You know,
There's a
um,
lot of truth to that. Well, another dangerous thing about well, I guess this is true of almost anywhere you live, but it's happened to my city, like Seattle. There used to be like a lot of areas of Seattle that were very reasonably priced. You know, like when I first moved here, very reasonably. The cost of living was, fine, especially coming from New York. And then everything got gentrified when so many of the tech companies moved in here, and there was just such a huge housing shortage, and it just shot the price up of everything. Where so many people were literally economically forced to move.
yeah, yeah, you get that a lot of times in neighborhoods. I mean, now obviously sometimes that makes neighborhoods very nicer in some regard, but then it forces a lot of people out. Like I said, I like the energy of a city. If I was an independently wealthy man, and money was no object, I might live in Manhattan, just because it's just such a fun place to be. But financially speaking, I prefer if you can find a rural area that's not too far from maybe some things to do and has some decent job prospects. That's where I'd say to live.
So are you someone who works on a budget? Like, I mean, how seriously do you take your finances? Do you like work off a budget? Like, I'm bringing in this much and I'm only going to spend this, or do you see yourself as kind of you flying by the seat of your pants when it comes to your finances, or
I
how
mean,
is
I
that?
used to be when I was really young and stupid. I mean, I used to, there were weeks I'd go up to the ATM like I'm hitting the slot machine. Like, come on, show me a 20. Um,
and,
but
and an agent card.
yeah, it's
Uh,
come on.
you're the guys that you punched in your code and it laughed at you once. Didn't that
Yeah,
happen?
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, nowadays, I mean, I don't budget as perfectly as I should be. Um, but yeah, I try to keep, and I do a lot of the online banking too. I like that's very convenient. You can just go real quick, check your balance, see where you're at. You know, maybe on a Monday if you feel like maybe you had a little too much weekend, double check it, see how you're doing for the week.
Right.
Um, the big thing I used to do that chewed up too much money, and I cut it way back because I used to eat out all the time. I used to just eat out constantly, and that's such a money sink.
I was thinking about that. I actually had ordered in food tonight because that is one of the downsides of living by yourself is constantly cooking for one.
Oh, that's a nightmare. Yeah, that's another reason I like to live with someone else. I mean, hell, just even cooking for two isn't that easy, but cooking for one, I mean, it's not easy to do.
No, because you end up making something. Because every once in a while, I mean, I do know I'm not like a good cook or anything, but I know how to cook. And every once in a while I get motivated and I make something, but I end up making a large vat of it, and I end up having to freeze it all, and then I'm eating the same thing for forever, and then you get sick of it. So that happens to me. So it is kind of rough just cooking for one, because you also end up wasting a lot of the food sometimes when you prepare anything that's not just a steak and a baked potato. So there is that. So yeah, that's one thing that single guys really have to watch out for is eating out too much. As convenient as it is, it's just God, it gets so expensive.
But again, psychologically, that's another reason I think you shouldn't live alone if you can help it, because it's nice to be able to eat with somebody. I know you're not always on the same schedule of people you live with. I'm on second shift right now, so Lord knows I know. But if you can sit down and actually eat with somebody, I've known guys that they live alone and all, and I mean they're not losers or something, but they literally end up being guys that just eat quickly over the sink or something. You know what I mean? Like it just becomes that kind of sadness, like that sad bachelor thing, where it's just, you're eating, you're just eating like you microwave up a hot dog and like squirt some ketchup on it. You don't throw a bun. You know what I mean? Like you're dipping a microwaved hot dog in a packet of honey mustard that you got from Sheets or something. I've known guys that do that, and it's just you could just fall into that trap when you're living alone,
Yeah, I mean there are challenges to living alone. I mean I'm quite comfortable with it actually, because I like yourself, I was an only child, so and I wasn't I spent a huge amount of time by myself, so I'm kind of being alone is my natural state, and I like to get out there and do things and go to socialize and stuff, but I really need my alone time. I can honestly say if I had a roommate, I think I'd just lose my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it was someone I really got along with. I mean, unless I live in a condo, so I don't. But if I lived in a house, maybe it would be tolerable. But I really need my solitude, and this is going to be very individualistic. Everybody's a different temperament regarding something like that. But at least living in a building complex, you never feel completely alone. It's not like you're Ted Kaczynski with a cabin in the woods,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's degrees of being alone, and also I have a car in the garage downstairs, and I'm just like a few minute drive from a bunch of nice pubs and bars and restaurants and coffee shops and all that kind of stuff. So if I ever I'm feeling I'm too isolated, I can just head out to one of the Starbucks that stays open till 2 a.m. and just chill.
Well, every place I've ever lived has been either a house or a big enough apartment that it's had multiple rooms. I had a very best friend of mine when he and his wife were first kind of married. They lived in an efficiency apartment, and I mean, this was like, like it was one big room, half of which was the living room, half of which was the bedroom, and then there was like a corner that was sort of a kitchenette thing, and then a bathroom. So I mean, I couldn't imagine doing that with anybody. Even a woman I was in a relationship with. Sometimes you just need a space.
Yeah, sometimes you need your space. These efficiency apartments. They actually made the news here. I don't know if they're calling them that anymore. I think they're calling them pods or something. They're being reduced to having to build those here because of the housing shortage. But I don't know if they're using that nomenclature. But I was going to say, that to me is that's just like one step above homelessness.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to stand living in it. It's not even an apartment. It feels like a really, really fancy bedroom, and that's your whole place.
Yeah, and I don't like the idea of I have weird little things like I don't watch TV in my bedroom ever. I don't even have I don't really watch TV anymore at all, but I don't even have a TV or anything in my bedroom.
Yeah, I haven't had a TV in my bedroom in a while either.
So it's not it's like that's for sleeping, and then so I just don't. But I don't have a computer in there or anything either. But I'm kind of that way. So living in this apartment where my bedroom and my kitchen and my toilet are all within spitting range of each other, I don't think I'd like that.
Yeah, and I can't imagine it with another person. I mean, like you'd have to be perfectly on the same schedule and all. I mean, can you imagine if you're trying to get to sleep and they're watching a show or something? I mean, yeah, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, I can't. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm at this point where I can't imagine moving in with living with anyone, even in a. But yeah, but no, you're right. That's so for most. But I mean, I guess there are people that have a temperament that they could do that. You know, for whatever reason, they're fine with it. But what are the things that you are there specific things you are because you live in a rural area that you know to be or think to be less expensive? Like housing for one, I'm assuming like there's a big difference in housing prices where you live as opposed to like the closest large city from where you live.
Oh yeah, housing is way cheaper. I mean, I can, I you even the difference between say the and it's barely a city, it's a big nothing, but Lancaster City in the middle of the county and living just to a little bit further south like I am, the southern end of the county. I you know a mortgage down here is often less than what somebody's paying in rent for a crappy 2-bedroom apartment up there. And again, that's in the same county.
Right.
um so yeah, you get a little bit out of the way for whatever reason. I guess just a lot of people don't want to be out of the way, and I understand why. There are downsides to it. um as I said, I mean, I'm a half an hour drive away from basically anything. I have, like, really really close to me, I have a grocery store, a gas station, a Burger King, and a couple of pizza places. That's it. That's this town that I live in. And if I want to go anywhere else, it's half an hour drive at least. And that's something that is pricier. You end up using a lot more gas. You got to kind of plan, you know, you can't really go out so much on a whim if you're watching your money, just because you chew up the gas. And but yeah, generally the cost of living is going to be way cheaper. The taxes on a place are going to be much cheaper. You're not going to have a lot of school taxes and stuff to deal with. Um, so yeah, the actual, getting a place to live is so much cheaper when you get out a little bit in a rural area.
Well, that's a big one though, because how the amount of the person's budget that goes to housing, I forget what the statistics are on that, but that's usually like the biggest single expense people have.
Oh yeah, that's something like, if you're smart, you've got it at about 60% of your income. I know people that, and I don't know how they're even doing it, but I know people, it's like, basically their rent is 80-90% of their income.
Oh my God. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know how they do that.
But I mean, most people, it's easily like 40-60% of their income. It's easily which, I mean, that makes sense. It's kind of the first thing you need.
Yeah. Outside of food is shelter, right?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah. So that's a big thing. So, that might be something that people could think about if you're, I mean, what I would recommend to like a young guy out there who's like says they want to save money, if it's at all feasible for them, if they have a reliable mode of transportation, hey, move out of the city a little bit. Move into the sticks a little bit more and look at the differences. Yeah, okay, you'll have a longer commute to work, but do the math over a year. How much money are you going to save in rent?
Yeah, and it's a little bit safer. I never have to. I'll never in my life have to worry about a Dindu's going to come and try and burn down my house because someone shot a guy with a bag of Skittles or something. That's never going to happen to me.
You don't have a lot of chimp outs in your town. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, not going to happen. If the chimp outs reach me, that's because it's actually a zombie outbreak.
Yeah, we're past DEFCON 1 at that point, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you're not totally safe. There was somebody went through this little neighborhood I live in, and all the cars that were unlocked in people's houses, they went through it looking for spare cash and all. But that's a rarity because, that's a good way to get yourself shot around here.
Yeah.
That's not a good plan.
Well, that's another thing, Chris, that we could touch on is the gun laws. I'm assuming are like, let's say, where you live as opposed to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, you're gonna have better gun laws. You're gonna, I have guns, and I haven't had to ask anyone's permission to get them. But I guess there's like background checks on some of them I've had to do. But I don't have to tell nobody I have guns.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about, well, gee, am I within 15 miles of a school, or or some those, I don't know if you know some of those ridiculous laws they have, like these gun-free zones, and I mean it's just, but like that, one of the challenges here in Seattle, we technically we're allowed to have guns because it's in the state constitution, but the individual municipalities are always passing their own separate laws, trying to make it harder and harder and harder. Like they actually passed a law here where you're not allowed to carry a gun in anything that is designated a green space or a park of any sort. Which is kind of ridiculous because there's huge areas that are, technically would be, parks or whatever. And also these are places that you'd really want. I mean, these are, the kind of places where there was, one of them has been turned into a homeless camp. I'm not going to go off on my rant about Seattle homelessness, but that's where you'd really want to have a gun. But I don't know if it's been tested in court yet, because it's in contradiction with the state law, and it's a city ordinance. So we'll see what happens.
Well, you're not immune to similar stuff here with just township commissioners and stuff like that want to be little petty tyrants. So that's crap you have to deal with everywhere. Local governments can often be just as ugly, if not more so, than state and federal. You get some guy who's the greatest thing he's ever accomplished in his life is being an assistant manager at Applebee's, and now suddenly he's the county commissioner. He's going to be on a power trip.
Right, but the difference is at least like, this is my feeling about it. I've never really lived in a remote area, I mean, traveled to them, of course, but if people who are elected to positions there, the people are more in touch with it. There's more direct answership. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's not bad. It's just,
like the city council person in a city the size of Seattle, they don't give a fuck about what I think. Because there's so many, millions of people here. But if you're in a smaller town, well, they got to start worrying about what people think, because one person can cause a lot of noise in a town like that.
Yeah.
So that is another advantage of living in a more rural area, is you're more direct involvement with, local government, and keeping the assistant manager from Applebee's from running for office, or keep from voting them into office, I should say.
As I said, if you're on a budget, I think more rural, a bit more out of the way, is the way to go. Now that said, though, if you're, you can have a bit more of a minimalist lifestyle if you are in a bit of a denser area. I understand that. Like I said, you don't have to have a car or that kind of thing, but by and large, I say rural, because more often than not, when you're kind of poor, you're going to be living in the sticks or the ghetto.
Sticks or the ghetto. That's pretty much it. So, all you kids listening, save your money so you don't have to. You don't have to be forced to make that choice. You don't want the choice made for you. You want to make your own decisions as much as possible. I mean, having control of your money, freedom comes with it. So, do what's necessary. Now, don't go rob a bank or anything, but don't fuck up. Anyway, we're going to keep this short because we're both so tired and it's so late. What are some of the things you'd just like to say on this topic or any other? And do stay on right before we go, because I do want to have and plug your channel too. I don't know what the status with that is, but
my main channel got a strike again. If you go to the link to the Land Shark backup channel is kind of, it doesn't have a proper link. It's just a jarble of letters and all. So if I'll
put that in the description after. I didn't put it in now because I didn't know. I haven't discussed with you the status of what's going on with your YouTube.
Well, if you go to youtube.com/the Bechtloff, you'll see the first thing up on there is going to send you to the backup channel. So
okay.
But yeah, I got a strike for being to the right of Karl Marx. So
that'll happen.
The other thing I'll say, and I know millennials are getting this bad rap for it. Oh, you live with your parents and all, but if you get along with your parents, then live with your parents until you have a good. Don't move out just for the sake of moving out. And again, that's if you get along with your parents. Obviously, if you have a bad situation at home, that's entirely different. But if you and your mom or your dad get along swimmingly, then take advantage of that. Now, I mean, pull your weight, help out with the bills and all that kind of stuff. Be a roommate to them if you're an adult living with your parents. But yeah, that's one bit of advice I'd give. Everybody wants to shame millennials for they never moved out and all that stuff. Well, I mean, yeah, you probably should, go have your own family and all by the time you're like 50, I guess. But if you're 21 and you're still living at home, don't worry about that. Just pull your weight, obviously, but use that as an opportunity to save up some cash, and maybe you can, get yourself in a position where you could, instead of moving out and pissing away rent. That's the other thing. If you can help it, don't rent. Don't rent. Get yourself a house if and when you can. Obviously, don't just jump into what you can't afford, but it's better to be paying a mortgage than paying a rent.
Yes, because rent, you're just making someone else rich.
Yeah. And don't go eating out all the damn time. Don't go drinking all the damn time too. Every kid wants to just drink all his take-home pay, and I get it, but just don't do it. Don't go to the clubs. The clubs are stupid. They're not fun. You think they're fun, but they're not fun. All right? They're that Skinner box kind of fun where you think you're having fun. You think you are, but you're not. And you can't even pick up, unless you got like mad fucking game, you can't even pick up women at a club anymore. Don't go to the clubs and piss away all your money on dumb shit like that. Get yourself a trade school if you're young. Get yourself, learn a trade. Save your money. Don't live alone if you can help it. Don't go piss away all your money at the club, where you're going to get in a fight because some dindu stepped on your Puma. Don't get into that dumb shit when you're 21. Like, I'm thankful that I was always a bit of an antisocial nerd, that I never totally got into that. But even I got into that a little bit because I was running around with a young lady that was enamored with that culture. But just don't get into that dumb shit. It's gonna, you're just asking to get into trouble. Don't, and for fuck's sake, don't drink and drive. That's the other thing. And I'm not even like a moralizing faggot, because it's just like you'll get raped doing that. Understand that. Like, how many buddies of mine I've known who have had insane financial hardships because they got their license taken away and a $5,000 fine or $10,000 fine because they made a right turn on red when they were slightly buzzed. And
then your insurance rates and
your insurance rates are through the roof. Don't do that if you can help it. Try not to get car payments. At least having to finance a car is a terrible burden. I'm lucky I got to 35 before I had to do that. And it's not even too bad of a situation because I'm not a young kid, so the insurance isn't raping me. But yeah, it's better to have don't get into debt if you can help it. Don't go to college. Don't fucking go to college. Oh man, go to trade school if you must. Don't go to college.
No, unless you have the government, unless you have like a scholarship or a grant or someone else paying for it. And
90% of you shouldn't be going to college. If you're some genius with an IQ of 400 who's got a grant to go be a physicist or something, yeah, go ahead and pursue that. But if you're just going to college because everybody told you to go to college, don't do that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. It's not what it used to be, college. Everybody goes now. It's pretty meaningless.
And guys, this is this little secret. I don't know if a lot of people in my generation know this, but they sell condoms at the store. Right? They're not expensive either. In fact, there are places that give them out for free if you look hard enough. But they're not expensive. You can get them at the gas station 24 hours a day, 365. Don't be some dumbass with a child support payment.
That's the biggest way to fuck up your life, is to have a kid that
and fuck up another life too in the process.
Yeah, it's intergenerational fucking. No, that's actually a good point, because actually that's one thing that I will criticize a lot of people living the sticks for is having kids they can't fucking afford.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. If you get a woman pregnant, say to yourself, look yourself in the mirror and vow that if you get a woman pregnant, it's going to damn well be your wife, and it's going to damn well be because you meant to. Say that to yourself and keep that vow to yourself, and your life's gonna be a lot better off. Because I'll tell you what, I've made a lot of mistakes, but I ain't got no child support payment. I ain't got no little bastards running around, and amazingly, that puts me leagues above a lot of my peers.
Yeah, and you got that, and it's pretty much a lifetime commitment, guys, and you have no idea what you're signing up for doing that. And oi, I don't even want to think about that. I mean, I don't have any kids, thank God, and I'm sure everybody else is thankful I don't have kids.
Yeah,
But
no, it doesn't feel as good with a condom. Yeah, I know. And a salad doesn't taste as good as cake. Sometimes you have to make a few sacrifices in this life for the planet.
And look, and I know, you can always at the end you can pull it off and finish on her stomach, and just self-pleasure it,
But just don't be the dumbass that knocked up some thought. Don't do that, guys. And any ladies listening, don't be that thought.
Yeah, ladies, just keep the dime between the knees, all right? That's the best birth control method for women.
Yeah,
but unless you got something really pressing you want to say, I think I'm going to wrap it up.
All righty. Yeah, that's about it from me.
All right. Well, thanks, Chris, for joining me. I'm going to put your link in the description after we're done here, so those who are viewing this in the future will have access to that. And I'd like to thank everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button, man. That really helps me out. And you got any questions, just put them there in the chat. All right, guys.